Hi there, I'd like to welcome you to the Ohio Chess Association channel on YouTube. And my name is Tom Britt. I'm a national chess master, and I'm very excited to have this opportunity, basically to share a couple games of John Stopa's. He is a great friend of mine. He died July 7th of 2017. Unfortunate circumstance. Anyways, he held the title of Columbus City champion a couple years. One was in 1997, the other was in 2007. And he was a very exciting player to play and to try to beat. Very tough to beat, of course. And one of the best things about John was had a sense of humor. You know, he'd go over the game with you afterwards, dry wit, and you knew where he was coming from. So, very fun individual. So the two games I want to go over, the first one is Emory Tate, who is a very famous chess player, international master, super strong. And he was white against John Stopa in this first game. So let's get started. This is, one second here. Okay, this is a double king pawn opening. And I think Emory Tate decided to try, this is a World Open back in the day. So Emory Tate decided to try and throw John off with essentially the Vienna opening. And John was a very strong double king pawn player, so he just matched knight for knight here. And here's where Emory went on down what I would call, you know, an offbeat avenue. So he played G3. Normally you'd play something much different here. G3 was taking John right out of his book. John really enjoyed playing the double king pawn, and he'd always play either the F pawn or the D pawn up as soon as he had the chance. So here he plays F5, very challenging for white. Emory was always up for the task, so he took the bait, took the gambit, if you will. And then John prepared to get a duo in the center. Here, this is an excellent play. Once John plays D5, Black's in good shape here. He has a duo. One of the things I wanted to mention here for everyone is to say that we have that duo controls all four of these squares. So you notice it's more like a shield right there in the center. Very, very strong, powerful for Black. Okay, Emory took the gambit, so he's going to try to hold on to that pawn. So you might imagine the best way he can do that is to go ahead and play the knight to h4 here. Now, John decided to break the duo in the center. One of the important things that when you have a duo is you only want to break that duo, in other words, move one of the two pawns, if it's going to give you a big advantage. Here, you'll notice that Emory's knight has to go back to its original square. So I would call that an advantage right out of the gate there. So John made the right play. Now he's just developing naturally. The bishop comes out, getting ready to castle. Emory's getting his pieces out. Black castles. Bishop pin on the knight. And this is an aggressive move. I know John was definitely playing for the win here. When you see this, now he's got a duo. He used to have it on his fourth rank. Now he has it on his fifth rank. So he's proceeding forward, being very aggressive, getting his pieces out quickly, and developing. Emory just carries on with his fianchetto. This is what's called a fianchetto here. When you put the bishop inside that puppy hole there, we call that a fianchetto. It's a French word for how you're developing the bishop. Okay. John looked at the tactics here and noticed that if he captured, he could open the E file and cause Emory the most problems. So that's why he played it here. Emory just simply recaptured. And now you might be surprised by this move John made. He plays knight to E8. And the thing about that is it looks like it's a retreating move. But John is thinking ahead, and he's seeing where else all that knight can play to. And eventually he's looking to get it to remaneuver the knight, reposition it out to D6. So that's what he has in mind. Also, he's not has no problem whatsoever trading bishops here, because once those come off, his position increases. And again, in chess, one of the most important things about trading is you always want to look at what's the position after the pieces are gone. Okay, it's not just about what pieces are coming off, it's what's the final position when you're done trading. And John's fine with where it's going to go here. So he's very happy. He gets the queen in the E file. Now he's got a check. When Emory blocks the check, here's the thing. John is a lower rated player. One of the advantages of being a lower rated player is you can play these checks, and when you threaten what's called a 3-move repetition, the higher rated player often does not want to have a 3-move repetition. He's not interested in a draw. He's playing for the win, of course. So here's where you notice on move 16, Emory Tate varies. He's willing to give up a B pawn so he can get developed. And his real goal here is to get everything out and try and win from there. He thinks he can outplay John in the middle game and end game. John, of course, is tricky, and he plays one of his best games of his life here. He looks at, again, back to the knight, goes to d6. The knight is now attacking all kinds of squares. We call this the octopus with the knight. And then when you have two of them, it's two octopi. Why is that? Because I'm going to look at these squares as well. These are the squares the other knight can go to, and there are 8 of those as well. And I just want to show an example of the power of these knights. Extreme power. You got those 16 squares are what all the knights hitting, and that's kind of what John was visualizing. So we've got a situation where it controls a lot of the central terrain, and it's just causing Emory some very great challenges here. So that's why knight d6 is such a great move. Okay, so Emory carries on. He's trying to hold, he plays g4, he's trying to hold his f-pawn, because what he's done here is he's taken a risk of taking the gambit. If he doesn't hold on to that pawn, then he has no gain out of it whatsoever. Okay, now John grabs the file, and of course the concern would be, hey, the queen's pinned to the king, we've got to block it. Obviously we've got to block it with either the knight or the bishop. In this case, you can't do it with a knight, so it's going to have to be the bishop. Okay, now John has enough pressure here on the e4 square to cause white a lot of problems. He captures, he's busting things up as best he can to get developed. Emory's trying to hold. Now John is getting the bishop out, and the bishop, actually this is one of the pieces that's going to win the game for John, this bishop to d7 right here, because it has in mind an attack on b5 later, because he's opened this diagonal here after these captures. So we're going to get to that here. White finally gets castled. Knight hits the center. You notice we have kind of a court grip here with these 4 pawns. Emory, that's a very rare situation you're going to get pawns in that shape. But I want to call one thing to mind. There's a combination here that's very important. This knight attacks the pawn, and the queen here attacks this knight. So we're going to look at this knight's attacking that pawn. This queen is attacking that knight. So we got a double attack. Very important in chess. When you can offer a double attack up to your opponent, they have to choose which one are they going to cover. Often they can't cover both. You know, sometimes there's unique situations where you can cover both, but in this case he can't. So Emory had to decide. His choice was, let's go ahead and cover the pawn. And that's a judgment call. He's a master, an international master, so he made that call. And now this is where John got an advantage. The bishop came out. You can notice how the bishop is skewering through to the rook. This is where black takes the initiative and is going to gain material, and from that point he's going to end up getting enough of an advantage to win the endgame. So that's what we'll see here in a moment. Queen has to, of course, move out of the way. Over to g2, kind of hiding over there, g2. We know that the rook's going to capture with development. Okay. Now, again, now in this situation, since John was up, all he's figuring is make sure that white doesn't get any attack on his king and trade as many pieces as he can. So that's what we're going to see as a small symphony here with John playing Emory Tate. So he's trading the knights, very happy. He's up the exchange. Things are cruising along. All he's going to do is keep the pressure on and keep an eye on white, because Emory has an ability to put the pressure on you if you let him. If you at all fall asleep. Here's a good example. He's got the pawn in on f6. He's trying to clear. This is a clearance sacrifice so his knight can get into a great square, and he's going to try and team up with the queen and knight. But John is very, very tricky in what he does here. John goes ahead and plays a check. Emory has to deal with that, and then there's further. The queen goes back, hitting a double attack. Again, we're looking at double attack here. What's he attacking? He's got the pawn and the knight. So he's got the choice. Should I save one or the other? In most cases, you're going to save the one that is worth the most, of course. Not in all cases, though. That's one of the beauties of chess. A lot of times the rules are broken. Okay, there could be a rule of what the general principle is, but a lot of times there's exceptions. So here, Emory saves his knight, and John's able to scoop up the pawn. White has to go with whatever initiative he has on the king side, because that's really all that's left for him at this point. And he knows, I'm sure Emory knew at this point he was in big trouble. So he's doing what he can to get some combinations, work up some tactics. John's getting his remaining pieces out, trying to scoop up the pawn on g6 here to really get that g file. Once he gets the g file, he's going to have total control. This rook to c1, it's a loose rook. One of the things I want to always mention in chess is when you look, just before you make your move, your candidate move, you want to look and scan what pieces are hanging. Here the g pawn was hanging and the c rook was hanging. We're going to take that g pawn and keep an eye on the rook on c1. Okay, another sacrifice by Emory just to try to cause a little bit of confusion. If you're down, you're trying to get tactics. So he gets a fork here. He's got knight forking the rook. But John saw far enough ahead to where the rook on c1 is also hanging. So if we look at the rook on c1 here, we actually have a check. We can see a check there. We're moving, but now there's no time for White to take this knight here, this rook here, because of the concern for his rook on c1 with check. So no time for that. There'd be a double attack. And the final analysis here is that we're going to force his White's queen away, and Emory's going to have to back off. He wasn't a fan of backing off. Emory was most often moving forward. He liked to attack, but in this case, he's down material. No matter who you are actually in this position, you're going to be in trouble. So John finished him off with the queen move, and there's nothing left, so Emory resigned there. So I did want to say we are going to have a second game. I'd like to encourage you to come back to the YouTube channel for our second unit, and that one will be with the very famous Eric Schiller.